everybody, this is Anne. Today I wanted to go over our pack Animus Incendo in Daz Studio. Before we get started, I wanted to go over what products are going to be used in this little tutorial. So obviously Animus Incendo Candle Collection by us. I will also be showing how to use Animus Incendo poses by Elliandra. She did really beautiful poses for the pack. If you don't have them, I would definitely suggest checking them out because they're gorgeous and they make using the pack a ton of fun and really easy. I will also be using Miriam HD for Genesis 8 Female by Muso. It's a Daz original. Ainsley Hair for Genesis 3 and 8 by April YSH. Autumn Hayes outfit for Genesis 8 Females by Wild Designs. And this outfit actually doesn't have shoes, so I just used these petty boots and leggings for Genesis 8 Female by I don't know if I want to try to say that. Chungdin, maybe? I don't know. I don't know how you pronounce it. But I used the boots. I did change the color to match the Autumn Haze outfit, the texture that I chose. And then I'm also probably going to be using Look at Me 2 Pose Control by Riversoft, which I use pretty much on everything. And then The Abandoned City 1 by Stonemason. So that covers what's going to be seen in the video, just for those curious. So to get started, we've got, oh, you can see the leggings are still open from the shoes. To get started, the first thing we need to do is find Animus Incendo, which is going to be under Props, and then Animus Incendo. So right here. And the first thing you're going to notice, there's a bunch of folders in here. The main folder just has all the different props in it. For use on like tables and stuff like that, I would take the props from here. Like if you want them to be hanging on a wall or sitting on a floor or just being used as a basic prop, I would take it from here. If you want Genesis to be holding the lantern or the candelabras, then I would suggest going into H poses and wearables and using the wearable presets. That's the fastest way. And in this case, you're going to see that there's a right hand and a left hand version of everything. So you've got left hand, right hand, left hand, right hand for all of the different pieces. In this case, I am going to use this lantern, lantern 2 right here, and I want it to be in her left hand. You can kind of see it if I have it here too. It'll say left hand. Just in case you aren't sure which hand you mean to be going to, you can always click and kind of look. I'm terrible with left and right, especially her left and right versus my left and right. But anyway, so I want it to be in her left hand, so just make sure Genesis 8 Female is selected, double click, and it's going to go right to her hand and put her hand on it the way it should be. So step 1, all done. The next thing that I want to do in this specific case is I am going to use one of Elliandra's poses, which should come up under Animus Incendo poses. They install, she was nice and she put them all right here for us, so that's where they install. Then what you want to do is go into the folder that matches the candle that you're using. Also, please note that she did actually do all the poses as regular poses too, so if you don't want to use the lanterns or the candles, but you really like one of the poses, she actually did regular base poses and then did the poses for each and every different type of candle, candelabra, lantern, etc. In this case, since we're using lantern 2, we're going to go into that folder, and she was nice and put the pictures of which one they kind of were on here. They're tiny, but you could see them. But so we're going to go into lantern 2, and in my case, I want a standing one. And I think I am going to choose maybe either this one or one of the ones down here. We're going to say I'm going to go with this one. So I'm going to pick this one right here and just make sure Genesis 8 female is still selected. Double click and there you go. It's all posed and ready to go. Now when you do it, if say you're looking, and you'll notice that the pose doesn't have high heels, but the shoes are high heeled. So I might actually need to reset the shoes here. Can't remember how to do that. How to make poses heeled that aren't heeled. I think a lot of times the shoes inject it, and I should have probably done the pose first and then the shoes. How about we just get rid of the shoes and not worry about it for now? Basically, if I'd have done the shoes second, then it would have adjusted her to be in the shoes right. But I don't feel like going back through what I did to do the shoes. So, okay, so we did the pose. We're to here. The next thing to take a look at is we could go ahead and add the environment maybe that we want to add, which might be a good time to do that. So in this case, I had kind of pre-selected an environment. If I click off of Genesis, that would be helpful. And I wanted to do the one abandoned city, wherever it is here, for a couple reasons actually. Did I go past it? No, that's Streets of Asia. Okay, there it is. So I'm going to double click, add this into my scene. First thing I'm going to do is probably go into top view. What I'd like to get is where this door, where she's kind of over by that door now more. Now I could just move her back there, but I personally like moving the environment more than I like moving the figure. So I am just going to grab onto that and kind of zoom her like so. And then zoom this over, and we're going to put her right here-ish, I think. I kind of want the door kind of close to her in the background there. Gonna move her forward a little more here, so a little more of the door is in there. Go this way, and then lastly I'm gonna move her up a little more because obviously her feet are in the pavement. And she really should be using shoes in this environment, but we'll leave her be. I am gonna maybe move her a little bit here. If I can grab this. Stop it. Okay. So we're gonna say we want her right here-ish. Now from here, I'm probably actually going to rotate the background a little bit just so it's not such a straight on kind of shot. So I'm going to rotate this and then kind of pull her back into place again. Zoop. We're going to say that that's kind of where I want her. Okay, so from here, what we need to do is start trying to figure out the light and stuff, and this is where this pack is kind of different and hopefully fun to use. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to add a camera in. So we're going to apply active viewport transfers basically from this view because I'm in perspective view. So we want to click on that. It means that this camera is going to match what we're seeing right here. So if I go into here, it doesn't look like anything changed at all. The next thing that I want to do is I'm going to want to turn the headlamp off. Now when I do this, you're going to see everything is going to go black on me. Obviously, if you're still posing things and stuff like that, you probably want to leave it on until you're getting closer to rendering or wanting to look in Iray preview mode. But I think we're pretty close to there at this point, other than I could do one more thing. I'll click on Genesis 8 and I'm going to use the look at me stuff, which is right here. And I'm going to have her look at the camera for me because I have a thing about having them look at the camera. So from here, let's see. I want to change the angle a little bit, maybe just a little. Okay. If, when you're looking, depending on the angle and stuff, it feels like the lantern is maybe turned one way or kind of rotated another way, and you want to kind of have it seem like gravity is pulling on it a little more, if you click to where the base is selected, I made it so that you can easily swing the lantern from the handle. So if you wanted to animate like she's walking and the lantern swinging, you'd be able to do that. If you wanted it to look like she's running and the lantern's flying behind her, I don't know. I did two different rigs on these lanterns. I rigged them from the top down and then from the bottom up, so that the ones in the prop folder, and I think there may be something in here that differentiates the two. Yeah. One will say table, and that one is rigged from the bottom up, and then the one that says hand is rigged from the top down, so that they function properly depending on if they're being held or whether they're sitting someplace. In this case, we're going to say that, you know, I want this to be about there. I could have turned this on and just rotated it by this red axis, which also matches the red dial. But we already adjusted it, so we don't need to worry about that. So now that I have it sort of where I want it, I think. Let me see. And maybe right there-ish. Now that I have it where I want it, what I want to do is go ahead and turn off that headlamp. So now I'm in pitch darkness. Ack! And now I actually want to enter into NVIDIA Iray preview, just to get a look at where we're at, how things look. We're going to give it a second here to kind of render out. It doesn't usually take too long on my computer. Now, what we're going to see is right now, it's a pretty dark environment. The light's showing fairly nicely on her. However, we cannot see anything else in this scene. Now, the reason I picked this particular scene is because if you run into this, we haven't done any adjustments, we haven't played with the HDRs, we haven't done anything yet. If you run into something like this, it normally means that the environment in question has a sky dome. So the first thing we want to do is open this up and kind of look through and go, okay, is there a sky dome? And yes, there is. It is right here, and we're going to turn off the visibility on that. And now, yay, there's an environment there. I only point that out because I know sometimes that can mess people up, and if you don't realize that there are sky domes and sets. I actually fought with one the other day. I'm like, why is this like this? And I messed and kept playing with lights, and here, that's all it was. So I thought it was worth pointing out real quick. Also, let's see. I want to change this to wide. It says wide right now, but it's not actually on wide. There we go. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is I want to start playing with the lighting of this scene. So I've got her, she's got her lantern, that's all fine, but we would obviously note that the scene is awfully bright for her to need a lantern. I mean, at this point, she's just walking around modeling lanterns in the city because there's no real reason for her to have one. Which is where things under render settings come into play. So what I try to do is make this set so that you could use your favorite HDRs, whatever they were, and still use my adjustments and settings, or you could use my HDRs, whatever you want to use. So right now I just have on this the regular DAZ Ruins HDR that comes with DAZ Studio. So I could use these settings to turn off the environment light by, well, right now I just turned it on. To turn off the environment light, which is going to take us back to this look like when the sky dome was on, but that's because right now there's no HDR being shown. You can use it to turn it on. So it depends on how dark you want the scene. These ones have to do with if you decide to render the HDR in the background. These were adjustments to adjust kind of the scales of the HDRs and flip them or turn off the background or on. So like if I click on this, you're going to see it turns Draw Dome on for you. Obviously, in this scene, you can't see the Draw Dome at all because I've got the buildings here. But just so you know, that'll turn the Draw Dome on and it will kind of mess with the scales and stuff. In this case, though, we can just shut it off. We don't need it. Next thing we want to take a look at is the HDRs that come with the set. So I included 6. They all have a little bit of a different characteristic to them. So this one is more of a evening, kind of late night, has like a blue cast to the environment. It's supposed to be like a late evening, either at night or just kind of shortly before. 2 is kind of a brighter blue tinged HDRI. This one is more blue also. They have a little bit different depths depending on which one you choose. Then when you get down into here, you get into kind of either early mornings or late evenings. So this is a sunrise, I believe. This one is a sunset. And then this one, I can't remember what this one is also a really late sunset. So depending on the look you want, you can kind of check those out. If you don't like any of them or decide you don't want to use any of these, you can reset it and go back to the default. You could add in HDRIs from other sets that you really like. For this specific tutorial, I think maybe I'll just stick with the regular default for this minute. The HDRIs that I put in here were made specifically kind of for dark renders. So they're meant to be like late evening. Like you can see this is pretty dim. If I quit putting my mouse in the way here. Obviously, sorry, I wanted to click off of that since we're not using it right this minute. Obviously, since this is a lantern pack, dimmer lighting is where, you know, the light from the lanterns looks more dynamic. So actually, I may actually use this HDR6 for now. Let's try that one. Well, no, I'm going to use one that's a little brighter to start. So, okay, I'm going to use 5. So from here, I might say, okay, well, I like this, and I like the lighting, but maybe I'm not happy with the positioning. I put in a bunch of dome rotations, and there's a fair few. These can be used with any HDRIs, so if I still had DAZs in here, I could use these with that. There are other sets that also include dome rotations. There's nothing different about mine. It's just handy. When you go through, if you kind of hover, the way you can gauge which way the light is shining is to base it off of the ball at the top of the lantern in the thumbnail. So if you look, the light is going to kind of move on that ball. Like, see how it's coming from its left right now. And if I move down this way, the light on that ball is more center of the ball or center of that black handle piece. So that will give you a gauge of where exactly the light is coming. So in this scene, maybe I want the light from the sunset or from whatever it is to maybe be coming from her right. So I might click on that to rotate the dome, and you're going to see down here when I do that, what it's doing is changing this value just with a simple click. It makes it easier to visually kind of see how the light is casting and how the shadows are casting and all that to just click through. The next thing to look at is, now that we've done that, the render utilities folder. Now this is going to do all the good stuff is in this folder, in my personal opinion. What this is going to do is adjust the bloom for the candles or the lanterns. It turns that on, and then you can fine tune adjustments. You can darken or brighten any HDRI that you have loaded. You can one-click change the tone mapping of the scene. This is all to help direct the way the light looks. So first, what I'm going to probably play with is going to be the bloom, and since this is a lantern, it's probably going to cast a fairly decent bloom. I'm going to say that's a little much for this particular scene. For some, I really like that one, but not this one, I don't think. So I am probably going to shoot for bloom 3. And you can see already it's casting like this really nice haze. I could decide maybe I want that tighter and try this one, and actually I like this one better than I liked that one. If I would have picked that first one, you're going to see how bright that is. That's very big and very bright. Granted, if you want the bloom to be this size, you know, this big in there, there are settings further down, which are going to be right here, that can calm down the brightness of it, like so. So now you're keeping kind of that level of just a very, very soft bloom coming off of the lantern. So you get how far out it's casting. It's just not as bright and not as obtrusive. And in this specific case, I think I'm still gonna probably shoot for one of these two. Let's see, either this one or this one. I say I'm gonna go for that one, and I actually might leave it the way it is. I kind of like that. Okay, the next thing is we can come down through here, and now that we've adjusted the brightness, we can look at thresholds. Now what the threshold does is kind of controls, I can't think of a good way to explain it, actually. That's terrible. It will help control how this glares off of things, or how far out, I guess, the bloom kind of casts on things. So if, like, she had a metal ring on, the threshold would make it so that you could fine tune where the ring maybe isn't gleaming, but the lantern still is. I hope that maybe makes better sense. In this specific scene, there wasn't a lot of metals, so there's not anything to really show that. Sadly, well, there's metal here, but I already made the adjustments to kind of take care of that. But that's mostly what it controls. If you look in this thumbnail, you can see like the glare up on the ring and up on the top where the white highlight is glaring. Threshold makes it so that happens more or less, depending. So in this case, I am not going to adjust the threshold at all because there's no reason to, but that's what you use it for in case you need it. The next thing I'm going to look at is dimming the environment. So there is dim, and then there's exposure. You can use either of them. In some cases with my promos, I actually played with both to get it kind of how I wanted it. But so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the settings. So if I click dim environment 4, this is the dimmest. Now at this level, hopefully you can still see. You can see the sidewalk some. If I don't highlight it like that, you can see the steps in the background just barely. If I go up to 3, you'll be able to see that stuff a little bit better, but it's still fairly dim. And then as you come up this way, it's getting brighter again. And then this is back to normal. So this is where we started. So for this particular scene, I might want, like, say maybe 2 or maybe 3, because I might actually want to be able to see kind of the stairs and all that in the background. So we'll say I'm going to go with 3. And then back here, or further down, you can adjust exposures. So if I do exposure 1, now this is also going to affect the brightness of everything. So if I do exposure 1, now the whole scene is really dark. You can't see anything. Well, actually exposure 0. Exposure 1, you can just barely see her peeking out. 2, you're seeing her a little better. You can kind of see her skirt and stuff, but you can't see much else. 3, obviously we're starting to see some stuff now finally. 4, now we're starting to kind of brighten things more. So if, when you use the dim, it's a little too dim, you can play with the exposure and possibly bump it up. 5, obviously now it's a lot brighter, and we don't need that for this particular thing, but in some cases if you use a really dark HDRI and you need it to brighten a whole lot, you could do that. And then 6 resets the exposure. Well, 6 and 7. I don't know why I have 2 of those. That was a little oops, but that's okay. Might have just changed it to Z reset, or this could be my fault actually. This one may not be even there in your version. I think I just have this one in. But that resets, and then this one will reset everything to default, which I don't want to do because that'll put me all back to the beginning and it'll clear out the HDRI and everything. I think it'll even reset the bloom and stuff too. But okay, so now we are here and we will say that we like the lighting. This is what we wanted. We wanted, the environment stuff to be pretty dim. We wanted the focal point to be on her face. From here, the next thing we can play with is going to be the lantern itself. And all of the candles and stuff have a ton of morphs, so that's another reason to point this out. So if you look, there is a candle melt, candle reshapes, like all the different candles and candelabras have various morphs that control different things. You can reshape the flames, you can widen the candles in some cases. Each candelabra or lantern has its own set of specialized morphs for that piece, so they aren't all identical to this. I think all of them do have the candle melts though. The fun thing about candle melt is depending on where the candle is within this lantern, depends on where the light is going to show on her. So if I change this and move it down this way, you are going to see now this isn't getting as much of the top of her face right here as what it was. If I keep moving it down, now it is casting more her hand and literally just the bottom of her face and more of her dress and stuff. So if you want to fine tune kind of where the light is aiming, use the candle melts. That's one of the things that they're very good for. In this case, the candle is really, really melted, so it's way down at the bottom, which is why so much of the light is going up. When I have it back down this way, it's more right in the middle here, and so this bar is blocking some of that light, so that's why it's actually changing some of the light. For this particular pose, and Ellie did this with her pose pack, which I thought was kind of awesome. What Ellie did was go through and pick where she thought the most ideal place was for the light to be casting, and she adjusted all these things for you already to kind of direct the light in the most logical place. There is also a glow dial as well, because there's a separate lighting factor inside. So if I move that up, now you can see it's casting actually higher up on her forehead. It's brighter towards the top of the lantern here than it was. And if I reset that, hopefully you'll be able to tell. And see how it's not quite as bright up in that top part anymore. That will also help you direct the glow if you need to. The glow hide is just, it's a little tiny piece that I'm using to actually emit the light. And so if for some reason that kind of is visible, you can move it up and down to kind of hide it within the flame where it's supposed to be. But so from here, really, this could be pretty much done. I mean, if I click off of this, it's a pretty decent lantern image. Here, we'll zoom in on her here, so hopefully it can be seen a little better. Now, at this distance, this glow may not quite be right. That's one of the things that these adjustments are good for, because depending on how far away from the camera you are, aren't, will depend on how much those glows, these casts, the bloom emits. So you might need to now readjust, like that's way too strong. That pushes it way outward, which is more the way I wanted it, but maybe a little too much. That one's probably closer, and now I probably want to back off the brightness. And now for the close-up, this is better than what we just had when we zoomed in. But you can see how you can pretty quickly and easily get a dim lit render. You can adjust the lighting. You can accentuate kind of the lighting cast on her. If we played around with the poses, which we could, you would see how it could adjust. You know, different poses are going to cast the light in different places. And I think that in her thumbs, she may have, no, maybe not. No, they don't really show where the light is casting. Well, some of them do. Like this one, you can see where the light's casting. But so different poses are going to cast the light in different places. So if I wanted it, say, more on her face, I might pick, say, this pose. Oh, and that's one thing to point out about the poses. There's a 1 and a 2, or a 1 and then an O1B. The B's are going to be the left hand, and the ones that are just O1 are going to be right hand poses. So if you use the left hand lantern, you want to use the B pose. That's worth pointing out. But so in this case, now we have changed, obviously. We have changed where the light is glaring. We've changed how it's looking. I might need to back this off a little bit so you can see it better and quit hovering over it once I get it someplace smart. Okay, we're going to come over here so you can see. So now it's in her hand. It's glowing up on her face. It's a different look. We might want to adjust settings again because each pose, these adjustments may be a little bit different. How you want it to look, how you want it to feel. This one is going to put it up by her face more while she's holding it. So we'll say after all that hard work and energy, maybe I prefer this pose. Looks like she's exploring this kind of dimly lit neighborhood, and I don't know, maybe there's a zombie behind her. Maybe there's monsters. Maybe she's in the zombie apocalypse. I don't know. But you can see how you can quickly kind of switch posing. I could readjust lighting because obviously now that I moved the camera back and stuff, we lost some of that bloom. So I can just come into here real quick, go back to the blooms, double click and try to get one that is the way I want it to look. So maybe I want that one, and I might, you can also brighten these too. So all of these settings from here forward, just dim it or brighten it. So if I go here, need to be, oh no I don't. Okay, that's the brightness it's at now. If I do this, it's going to get brighter and brighter and brighter. This is full blown. If I want to back it off, obviously go back down to here, and now it's just softer. And for this scene, maybe I like it a little bit brighter, so I can kind of do that and go on with my day. And these settings also kind of pull the bloom inward more and more. So if it's too far out, you can keep going down. Now it's really tight and just glaring right here. Okay, so at this point, what I wanted to do was go over one more thing. Um, as you can see, I've now kind of set up a whole scene. I added some more fun things in here that I wanted to give a shout out to. So I'm using the Disruptor Alien HD for Genesis 3 Male, which is a Dazo. I think that it's probably, oh shoot, Josh Crockett's, I'd assume. And then also poses for Disruptor Alien HD. So I'm using those two things. Um, Sadly, I did not have any zombies. I wanted zombies, but I have no zombies. I'm feeling very defeated right now. Anyway, so I know we did a little jump forward in time here, but it struck me that I forgot to go over all of the settings that are under materials. Because reasons, I guess. I got so involved in settings and how to play with the light, I forgot to show all the other stuff. So the first thing I wanted to point out is, let's see here, that some of this we're going to do in this view just because it's a bigger scene and it's heavier. Obviously you have all these material presets. The ones on the main level materials, when you scroll through, you're going to see there's so many for each individual candle, candlestick, candelabra. So there's like a regular default matte that applies regular default settings. Then you have gold bases and silver bases for all the ones that have like these metal pieces. Now I didn't do that for like the lanterns though. Next you'll see, you know, presets for candles for that specific, like candelabra 1, candelabra 2, and so on and so forth. So if you want to switch colors or something like that, you would just go to whichever lantern you're on. So in this case we're on lantern 2. You would double click one of the options and it would change the color. Now in this view you can see it change color, but you can't really see it because we're not in Iray mode to really see it, and this is done mostly with shaders. But you can kind of see it there, like how it changed purple. The next thing I want to point out is this candle extras folder, which works a little different, and it probably would have been smart if I'd have put some directions in here. I put, you know, apply first, but that might not have really clarified what needs done. So basically what this folder is for is if you really want to customize the color, change it to your own colors, change different things. But in order to do that, first you have to switch away from my main material bases that I made here. So if you decide you want to kind of play with the color of the candles, then you'd come in here first, go to the candelabra lantern in question, and double click and load that. And before I do that, let me turn the bloom off here for a minute. Wrong. Bloom off. Okay. So if I am in here, first you would double click this. It's going to add a different style of texturing to this. So you're going to notice our candle is now white basically. And then all of these colors down here work for any of these bases. So if you load in candelabra 1 and load this up, you can use any of these colors now on the candles. So if I want one that's kind of a brighter red, I can double click this one, and now I'm going to get a brighter red candle. If I want it to be kind of darker, we can go this way and get it to be darker, and these will work on any of them. When you come farther down, you're going to see where we go back to saying about like candelabra 1, candelabra 2. That is because these are specifically different maps to control the translucency. So how far down kind of the glow on the candle goes, or how it shows. So in this case we're on lantern 2, so we'd have to go way down here to lantern 2, and now I could pick any of these different ones to change the glow. Like I think this one is super strong, and hopefully we'll be able to see the difference here. But you can see how now, instead of just this top little bit kind of glowing, this whole piece is glowing. So that's what this is doing. It's kind of refining the way the translucency is. I gave like 5 or 6 different translucency maps per candle, or per, I guess, prop technically. But so you can kind of experiment with those. Some of them are more stylistic, like this one right here. For this one is really drippy. So just if you want to experiment, you'll need to go in here, load the corresponding mat to the prop you're using here first, and then play with all of these. The next thing I want to point out is there's this handy dandy utilities folder, which I completely did not go over at all. So what we're going to do is I'm going to actually go to my camera now and let this load up. Okay, so we're here. We have our creepy monster that's going to attack. The first thing you're going to see is on all the lanterns, there's 2 glass settings. One that says glass matte and one that says glass diffuse. Now what glass diffuse does is it kind of contains the light within the lantern more, which there could be cases or reasons why you would want to do that, so I added that in. By default, all the lanterns are set on the glass max so that you get the most glow cast from the lantern, but you can double click on the corresponding one to your lantern here, and that's going to pull that back. It'll take a second to adjust, but you can see how the light is a lot less strong now. Like the glow on her is definitely more faded. It's going to be real pixely because the scene is really dim, and turning that down kind of made it even dimmer, so it's going to take more time to calculate everything. But I just wanted to point that out because it is something you can experiment with. I personally like it better on Glass Max, but I like to include things just in case people want it. The next thing, and you'll see that says the following materials work on all candelabras, candlesticks, and lanterns. So the next thing we're going to look at is there is a flame on off. So if I double click this, we're going to turn the flame on the lantern completely off. This is going to turn it back on, so now we're glowing again. These settings, the next ones, control what color the glow is from the lantern. So if I double click this one, you're going to get a bright orange now. And see how the cast is orange on her inside the lantern. A darker orange, which makes it even a little more dim and deeper. I was using the white, which I think is the default on all of these. There's yellow orange, kind of a softer yellow. I actually do like the yellow and the yellow orange depending on the situation, because it does add a certain amount of kind of ambiance to the lighting that just the plain white doesn't always do. But I just wanted to point out that you can kind of control the colors there. It's also going to change the color of the glow too. So if I turn the bloom back on here, you're going to notice that, well, I'm not on scene, that's why. You're going to notice that like the emitted light is going to be a bit different as well. So see how that's kind of more orangey red now. If I do the brighter orange, it's not going to be quite maybe as red as it was, but it still kind of has like a reddish orange tinge to the glow. But so that's something you can also play with. I wanted to give people as much control over kind of what they wanted the stuff to look like as I could. The next thing, now that we're going to go back to the white again here, the next thing I wanted to point out, after I think I sneeze, hold on, maybe. Okay, I think crisis averted. No? Okay, yes. Sorry. Next thing I wanted to point out is there's also strength. So emission strengths set in here as well. So we'll just start at 1. Is going to be a very soft emission. So as you can see, the glow is not casting as far over onto him. It's not casting as harsh on her anymore. Strength 2 it's going to be a little harder. And I think that these might be set at like right around like 3, 4. I think it might have been 4. That's the default. Um, so if you want to pull it back or bring it forward, go from about 3 or 4 backwards or forward. But so here's 3, 4. Now we're going to get brighter and brighter. And in some cases, you may want it to be very, very bright. It depends on kind of your goals, where the lanterns are, or how you want it to be visible, or where the candlesticks are. Um, so this goes all the way up to 9, which in this scene, because it is so close to her face, is going to completely blow her face out. And I'll even show you, because but obviously, if I was using one of the poses where she's holding this, say, out this way, like farther away from her face, I might want it as strong as 9 to still cast over more onto her. And then this one right here, I'm gonna turn this back down. Actually, we're gonna turn it down to maybe like 2 so we can see better. And I'm gonna go back to perspective so that we can see better. Okay, these last 2 settings have to do with, I actually make like these little glow balls. So instead of using the flame itself kind of to cast the glow, I have this little ball in here so that you can control the cast better. So you can make it larger or smaller, move it up or down from the candle, so you can really kind of direct. That's what some of those morphs were that I went over previously. But so that you can really direct like where the light is going for you. And so if you want to be able to see that ball to move it, then you're going to want to double click that, and there, now the ball is visible and obviously very bright. And hey, maybe you actually want that like that so that it looks like a really strong glow inside the lantern. But then from here you can go into the shaping stuff, and I can do, raise this, say, up higher. And I can do show hide, which is basically going to make this bigger or smaller, basically. So if I want to calm this down, I can make this teensy tiny, but still emitting just a ton of glow. I would suggest, if you decide you want to move like the shine or the glow from this up higher, I would try as best you can to get it where you like, and then you want to turn it back to emit invisible again before you render, generally, or you're going to have like this separate glowing ball, unless of course for some reason in this lantern you want there to look like some kind of mystical energy is in there, in which case leave the glowing ball on. Another thing I also wanted to point out, and it's not something that's in my pack, it's just kind of a little tidbit or fun note, maybe because I have a thing for like this specific genre, but if you're into like, say, fairies and little elves and little gnomes and things like that, and you like to do kind of like the little captured art where like they're like a kid caught a firefly kind of, you could actually hide the candle and the flame and kind of turn all these areas off. Like I could come in here or I could leave the light on and just make everything else invisible, and you could actually put little creatures and stuff in here. If you decide for some reason you want to do something like that, you can come in here and go to surfaces, and you'd want to click on, I think, candle holder, candle, wick, and flame, most likely, and just turn the cutout opacity all the way down. And now those things are gone. Now right now you'll see I've still got the glow going, so the inside can still glow even though the candle went poof. Now I will say, when you take the candle holder out, I'm not entirely sure. There may be a hole where yeah, there is kind of, or no, that might be actually burnt AO. I think I burnt some AO in here, but there might be a little smudge. You could always turn kind of the candle holder base back on if you really wanted to. like so. But you can actually turn that off, place things kind of in there, and from most angles, honestly, unless you're shooting straight down like I just was, you're not actually going to be able to see that anyways. But I just wanted to show that, there was like a different way you could use this, and some of Elliandra's poses really, really lend themselves to that. Like, if I go into her poses, especially, where is it? Like this one? I could totally picture that, like a little fairy or something inside. Um, there's a couple other ones that kind of strike me that way too, funny enough. But I just thought I would point that out because it is kind of an extra fun little thing you could do that maybe you hadn't thought of. Some like this could work too, or this one. So just something to consider. Anyways, now I think I've officially gone over everything I can think of. I hope that that thoroughly covers everything. If you have any questions, please let me know. Feel free to ask in my thread or message me on the DAS forums, and I'll be happy to get back to you. Other than that, if you have not checked it out, please consider checking out our website at www.art-collaborations.com. And thank you very much for watching.